Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Valeo Values Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Hockman, and today's guest is one of our former players and current Venezia midfielder in Serie A in Italy, Patrick Leal. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, before we delve into everything, our first question here on Valeo Values is how did you first get your start in soccer altogether?
Well, my dad was a Man U fan, and he's always been playing soccer, so that's how I got into it. And he started a small club, so I played for his small club when I grew up.
What were you interested in playing other sports growing up, or did you know right away soccer was going to be your passion?
I mean, I did play basketball for a season or lacrosse or whatever, but I always knew that soccer was my favorite sport or the sport I wanted to play.
Did you enjoy, those other sports? And did it I always advocate for, if you're going to train in soccer, try out other sports because cross training and that other techniques and other sports can cross over into your soccer training as a kid.
I mean, to be honest, not real. I mean, lacrosse didn't really like. The only other sport I sort of liked was basketball, but soccer's always been the sport.
What was something you knew you enjoyed so early on about playing soccer? It's a loaded question.
Maybe, yeah, it is a loaded question. Maybe just the competitiveness, because I'm a competitive person, and I mean with my brother, so I think just wanting to be better than him.
That makes sense. It's one of the. How much older is your brother, or is he younger? You're twins.
Yeah.
Okay. I probably should have known that coming in, but I mean, is that something that you wish that other people had growing up in terms of just being an athlete and having that sibling rivalry, or is it something that you can find that motivation on your own almost?
I mean, you could find the motivation on your own. It's just the motivation that I found was to get better, was to try to be better than him. Obviously, there was other things I wanted to be better at, or but he was one of the motivations.
Absolutely. I mean, for a lot of kids, the journey starts with something like in-town soccer, where you have those those reversible jerseys that you're playing with, and you're playing with your friends and your parents, and your parents are the coaches. I mean, was that? I mean, you mentioned it a little bit. Was that sort of how your journey started?
Not really. We always played at the small club that my dad made. I did play Newton town soccer for a season, just for fun with my friends when I was younger. But no, we always played on my dad's team.
There's a lot of kids that develop differently, and I feel like from a player standpoint, do you think there's a benefit to playing that sort of in-town atmosphere, or would you recommend, if you want to play at that next level? I mean, it's a tough decision to make early on as a kid, as a 6, 7, 8-year-old.
Yeah.
I want to play in Serie A. Should I find a different club, or can I do the more, quote unquote enjoyable portion of it all?
I mean, to be honest, when you're 6, 7, and 8, it's so young that it doesn't really matter who you're playing. I mean, I'm sure it does a little bit, but you're so young. As long as you're playing and having fun at that age, it really doesn't matter.
Was your first real experience getting soccer-specific training with that club with your dad, or was it a one-on-one coaching situation?
I guess with my dad, but also one-on-one with my dad, in the yard, at home.
Is that something that at what age do you recommend? Kids start getting that one-on-one training. Is it as early as possible?
As early as possible.
Yeah. And
for sure.
What was that like for you? Because not everybody has that advantage of having your dad as a coach.
Mm-hmm. Me and my brother got lucky that our dad was able to teach us stuff so early on, and well. But other kids, I'm sure, could develop their skills at the same age with other people.
Is there something that you recommend? A lot of this is going to be asking your advice and asking based on your own experiences. But I feel for those kids that don't have those resources, what are some things that they can do just to sort of keep up with the kids that have that advantage of having a coach at home 24/7?
I guess you could train alone, and I would definitely just focus on technique. Technique is super important.
Absolutely, it's one of those things where like I said, not having that coach there to say that's good technique or that's bad technique. How do you sort of circumvent that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess you just see how other people do it, how professionals play, and you kind of just sort of judge it. But also when you're that young, you're just developing your body, you're just getting used to the ball and stuff. So when you get older, you could really focus on the technique. But at that age, it's just playing.
Yeah, I mean, what was something aside from the technique portion of everything? What was something you focused on early in your training, whether it be like we covered the technical side of everything physically or even mentally?
Well, when I got older, I realized how important the mental side of the game was, especially living somewhere else and going abroad. But when I was here at Valeo, something that they really focused on was the tactical side and the understanding of the game. And I developed that really well here. That's something that Valeo does really well, is developing the understanding of the game. So I think that's really important.
That's and we'll touch on that in a little bit as well. I mean, but talk more about the mental aspect of everything. I mean, what's that big thing that you needed to focus on?
Yeah. Well, at first it was off the field stuff, just learning a new culture, language, and all that stuff. But once you get used to that on the field, it's just confidence, because coming into a foreign environment can be scary at times, especially as an American. But if you know you're good and you're confident in your ability, then you'll succeed way more than when you're nervous and all these other things,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's something that you told yourself walking into a new environment? Because you can, it's one thing to say, come in with confidence, but what's something that you told yourself or did for yourself that gave you that confidence?
Basically, just I've been on a field and I've touched the ball so many times. I do know what I'm doing. It doesn't matter who I'm playing against or who I'm playing with,
Yeah.
So just you got to tell yourself that you deserve to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, like a lesson that I learned over the years, and it took a long time to get there, but and it's a good lesson to just have in life as well, but know the things that you can control. Because the more you focus on the things that are out of your control, you're going to start to spiral. If you know you can control your own touch, you can control your own attitude,
your own emotions,
absolutely. If you can keep those things in check and focus, I know that I've done this before. I know that I've been challenged before. That's where that is going to start to feel like, all right, I have this self-belief. I know I can do this because I've done it before.
Yeah, and if you're playing and you make a mistake, how can you...
when you make a mistake.
When you make a mistake, exactly. Because you're going to make a mistake. And it's how you deal with it after. If you have the confidence to be like, all right, it's just a mistake, forget about it. And then you have the confidence to make the right decision the next play.
I mean, when you're at a level that's as high as Serie A, which is the highest you can get professionally, the stakes are the stakes have to be a lot higher. So when you make a mistake at that level, what's the first thing you tell yourself? Because there's always that guy behind you that's waiting for you to make that mistake.
Yeah. Well, when you make a mistake at the highest level, when you play at the highest level, it's that's the level you're at. So it's you're kind of used to the standards.
Sure.
So that definitely helps, but it's just a mental thing. If you make a mistake, you just got to move on, and if you make a mistake in a game, you're not even thinking about the mistake because you're trying to win the ball back,
exactly.
and then eventually you've already forgotten about it. So,
yeah. So you came to Valeo when you were 11 years old, and you spent 2 years with the club. How did you find us, and what was your first impression when you initially arrived?
Well, I came to Valeo because my dad, the team that he made, we joined with Valeo. So all the players from my dad's team and Valeo, we all made a team to play 11v11.
Sure.
And that's how I got here. And but Valeo, I loved it here, man. Valeo was one of my favorite teams to play on.
What was your first impression when you got here?
Just I really like the vibe of it being here. All the coaches and everyone had played with confidence and they played with like swagger, you know what I mean? So it gave me confidence on the field to play better.
For those who are listening or watching and you're hearing a nice humming in the background, we're getting a good combing of the turf at our facility. So apologies if that's a little bit distracting, but we timed this episode perfectly. But yeah, Valeo does have that kind of swagger about it. And I credit that a lot to, and I talked to, Emilio, who you know really well, the president and founder of the club. And that's part of the niche of this club, is that we instill that confidence in the players. And it's really cool that you felt that right away.
Yeah. Yes. It comes from the top to the bottom, from Emilio all the way down to the 16-year-olds who are working, coaching the little kids, everyone everyone acts the same.
Yeah.
You know.
And what was the big? You kind of touched on it earlier, but what was the biggest focus that was applied to your training as a player when you were here, and how did that? And did the way you were coached here differ from other clubs that you've played with?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, their philosophy here was definitely kind of trying to mimic like the Barcelona tiki taka style, and keeping the ball and playing quick. So that was definitely something that we worked on and definitely improved on while we were here.
I've harped on it so much, but like the uniqueness of a club like Valeo. What did you notice that was unique when you got here? I mean, because everything that I've heard, from the mentality to making sure that you know the players and keeping it small, and what's something you noticed was different?
Definitely, what I just said was the playing style. The way we would dominate games when I used to play here was like second to none. We really like played really well, like good football.
What are some of the bigger lessons that you've taken from your time here at Valeo and applied to the way that you train and that you play?
Well, definitely the way I play is definitely the playing style that they have here is just play quickly, check your shoulder, think before you get the ball, know what you're going to do before you get the ball, just little things like that. Playing someone the right foot like in front of them so they could take a touch forward, little stuff like that.
And I feel like the fundamentals, things like that, get lost on a lot of youth coaches. It's a lot of passing patterns and focusing on your first touch, which is all great. But if you can't learn the awareness portion of the game, which is, I would argue, like 90% of soccer, is being aware of what's going on around you, that's when the disparities start to become evident between the players that are able to play well at the next level and the players that sort of plateau, you know?
Yeah, it's stuff like if you have space and you check your shoulder multiple times, you could turn and get going forward. But if you maybe check your shoulder once or don't at all, maybe you'll play it back or take like that extra second to turn because then you feel comfortable turn, and then that's sets the difference between a good player and a great player. You know, it's just little things like that.
After your 2 years here at Valeo, you played with the New England Revolution Academy for a year before moving to Portugal and playing for Belenenses for another year, and then signing for Sporting Portugal at 15 years old, which, for those who don't know, that was Cristiano Ronaldo's first club.
Yes.
Talk to me about that whole journey and just how everything came about there. Because, I mean, I just laid out a lot.
Yeah.
It was like 4 or 5 years. But, I mean, just talk to me about just... You know, you move from here, all right, you go to the Revs Academy, like I just talked about, then you go to Portugal, and I mean, just walk me through everything there.
Yeah. Well, every year I always want to play at the next step. And when we were at Revs, it was good, but we thought that if we stayed, we'd maybe plateau or stagnate, or we wanted another challenge, and especially in Europe. And it's a long story how I got to Belenenses, but Valeo had a contact, so we had played a tournament there. But anyways, I played at Belenenses, and then the first year in Portugal is difficult, like learning everything else. But then I got to Sporting from a scout watching me play at Belenenses. So then I signed for Sporting when I was 15.
How did that? I mean, you're playing in Portugal, and how does this scout reach out to you? I mean, how does that all happen?
Well, it was actually a couple days into playing for Belenenses. I played in a friendly, and they had a scout watch me play. So I could have gone to Sporting a year earlier, but then Belenenses was like, no, you should stay. You're not ready yet. You should
develop a little bit more.
Develop a little bit more. I think they just wanted to keep me. But yeah, the scout ran down to try to get my dad's info or whatever, and then I got a trial a week later maybe, and then I stayed at Belenenses, so they kind of forgot about me. But then a year later, I trialed with them again, and then that's when I stayed.
Talk me through how a trial works. I mean, what's from start to finish? What's going on?
Well, when you get there, they give you your clothes. To be honest, they don't really you don't have someone next to you like bringing you to each thing or whatever. You kind of have to fend for yourself. You kind of, if you see the age group, kind of follow them and maybe say hi to the coach. Probably not. I didn't. And then you just train. And then you just have a week of training with them. You're just thrown into the possession drills and all stuff like that, and just hope
So you're just thrown into a practice session, essentially.
Basically.
I mean, what's that mentality like?
Well, it's all the other stuff. It's not the playing. It's kind of the language and if you mess up, all the kid. When there's a trial kid, you kind of get a little more mad when he messes up or loses the ball. So it's kind of dealing with stuff like that, other than the actual playing. But other than that, it was a decent decent trial.
But you're just thinking to yourself, all right, just don't mess up. Just focus, like similar to what we talked about. Just focus on the things you can control and just act like it's a normal training session.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. I mean, I feel like somebody under that much pressure with the potential of signing a pro contract.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's the difference between you and me. I'd be panicking.
Yeah. Well, you don't really think about stuff like that when you're playing.
Yeah.
You kind of just play, and then you definitely think about it before or after. But when you're playing, you're chill and just focusing on where to be and where to go and stuff.
Fair
like
enough.
that.
I mean, after 3 seasons with Sporting, you signed for your current club, which is Venezia in Italy. Talk to me about that process.
Yeah, well, at Sporting, I just felt like I wasn't given opportunities to go to the first team, even though I thought I deserved them. But if you don't get them, you don't get them.
That's true.
So that's life. It is what it is. So we just thought it would be better to go to another team, which happened to be Venezia. Their owner's American, and they have 2 Americans on the first team already, and one who's on the national team. Gianluca Buzio and Tanner Tessman. So it just seemed like the smart move to go to a team that was American friendly and also still a good academy and team.
What's it like training with a guy like Gianluca, who's made multiple caps for the national team?
It's fun. You just learn seeing like how other players play and move and stuff. So it was a fun experience. He's a nice guy. So
yeah, I mean, what's a big difference you noticed in your training while you were here in the States versus over in Europe and Portugal and Italy?
Well, when I was training here, I was definitely younger, so the level is actually pretty similar when you're 12, 13 compared to in Europe.
Interesting.
But when it gets to high school or maybe 8th grade or around that, that's when the level definitely goes much higher in Europe, and then here kind of people just start playing in high school or they're like, I'm just going to go to college, so they don't take it as seriously, just stuff like that. And Europe's just like, they just keep going up.
I mean, a lot of people quote this type of mentality that you need to have to make it at the professional level. We talked about it before, but what's something you learned from your pro teammates at Sporting and Venezia that you've had to implement into your own mentality?
Definitely. Again, confidence. It's just,
maybe it's nothing new. Maybe we've all heard it before.
Exactly. There's no secret to any of this. It's also just like dealing with fans. Like if you make a bad pass,
I deal with fans all the time.
Exactly, and the fans start booing you and stuff. Like it's how you deal with that. And it's just confidence. Yeah. And confidence is I would see it as a broader term because there's definitely other things that go with that. You know what I mean? But in general, just confidence.
Yeah, I don't know how I deal with getting booed at my job, but I'm sure it happens. On May 22nd, you made your Serie A debut with Venezia. Talk to me about when you knew you were getting in the game. What was going through your mind as you stepped on the pitch during it all?
Yeah, well, I was training with them for a month and a half before I debuted.
The first team?
Yes, with the first team. And I was supposedly, these are just rumors or you kind of overhear things, that I was supposed to debut against Juventus, which would have been in the Allianz Stadium, which would have been really cool. Definitely would have asked for Dybala's shirt or someone's shirt.
Yeah.
But then...
Was that Dybala's last game as well?
It was one of them.
Okay.
And then the coach, unfortunately, got let go midweek. So then they just brought in the academy coaches just to end the season. And he was looking to keep his job for next year. so he wasn't gonna play an academy kid, until it was kind of impossible to stay up.
Yeah.
So that's why I debuted the last game. But I was supposed to debut against Juventus, supposedly.
I mean, how were you feeling when you stepped on the pitch? Was it just laser focus? Was it blinders? Was it thinking about everything all at once?
Yeah, well, we had to stay in a hotel before the game, and we had like 6 hours in the hotel. And
that's a lot of time to think.
Oh my God, that was the longest 6 hours I've ever experienced. I mean, I didn't know for sure I was going to go in. Like, I did and I didn't. Like, if I...
It's one of those things where you're always ready.
Yes, exactly. And all the players were saying, like, yeah, I think you'll go in. I think... Because I was playing or training really well the last couple weeks, and they started to respect me more, talk to me more, the more I was with them. But man, those 6 hours in the hotel, I got super nervous. But then once you start eating with the players and talking and everyone's chill, then I'm chill. And then I thought I was going to be extremely nervous when I was going to be told to go warm up. But I've warmed up so many times, that I was just calm. I was like just super ready to get in.
And that's a lesson that a lot of kids who are listening can really learn, is like, once you build a routine for yourself pre-game, during the game, doing have a semi warm-up routine, stretches, just doing the same pattern, that's one of the big things that's going to be able to relax you during those moments. It's like, all right, I've done this before, now I know what to do next. Now I know what to do next. Now I know what to do next.
Yeah, just little steps, step by step, and just being calm.
And that's where that confidence comes from.
It ties into confidence as a broader term.
And that ties into my next question. I mean, we've talked about the whole confidence aspect of everything, but aside from that big portion of what's going on in your head, what's a mindset that you've had all these years that's helped propel you to playing at the most prestigious level of soccer in Italy? I ask because, like we just talked about, I'm sure there's a ton of kids listening who play at the club or who play at Valeo now or just play at the youth level in general that would love to know what drives you.
Well, definitely, like we said before, that there's no secrets to anything, and it's kind of a cliche, but it's just hard work. And the harder you work, the more things will come in the future for you. I know that from personal experience. Just hard work is extremely important, and finding motivation. To be honest, I don't know. I just have extreme motivation to either succeed or to want to be better than certain people or players or prove people wrong. Or there's so many different motivations.
There's nothing better than proving someone wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So there's so many motivations, but as long as you have one that's really gonna push you to work hard, then it doesn't really matter what motivation you have.
If you could say anything to the players at Valeo right now or the coaches, I mean, what's a piece of advice you'd just give to them in general, just in their footballing world or their life in general?
Like I just said, just work hard. Put in the work. Go when you don't have a game on the weekends. Like me and my brother and my dad would come to this field every weekend. Just do some shooting, do some passing, technical work, whatever it is. And the more you do it, it builds and builds and builds, and then that's where the confidence comes in as well,
Absolutely. Thanks so much for taking the time to sit down with me, Patrick.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun.
Guys, thank you so much who are listening. Thank you to those who have been watching along as well. This has been the Valeo Values Podcast. Thank you again to Patrick Leal for coming on. I have been your host, Carter Hogman. We'll see you guys next time.